Okay, guys, this is going to be the beginning of chapter 3 of Fahrenheit 451. I'm going to apologize for the weird lighting right now. It just got dark outside, so I got very little light coming in from over here, and my overhead light just puts these bars of light across my face, makes it really hard to follow, very distracting. This does block out your view of me a little bit, which is probably a good thing, to be honest. So I'll apologize, and hopefully it won't stay this way. I realize the quality here isn't great. I'm using my laptop camera as opposed to an actual camera. Did not anticipate being on a month and a half, 2 month long sitting at home thing. So we left off chapter 2 with Montag pulling up to his house, realizing, oh crap, I'm busted, because we can only assume that they were about to burn his own house down. So as this chapter starts, we get him and Beatty having their confrontation. Now remember, in a plot map, we always talk about climax. The simplest form of climax is when your protagonist and your antagonist finally have some sort of interaction. They face off. Sometimes it's a literal fight. Sometimes it's a verbal sparring. But some form of, something will happen where they have an interaction where things are very different after that interaction. We're in that section. It's not always just a specific point. If you have a very short story, it may be. But let me pause. There we go. It may be that way, but if it is a book like this, sorry, as soon as I start my video, there's every email starts. All right, but for a book like this, you're probably going to have a little bit of a plateau period where there's a section, and that's what we're going to read today. Actually, majority of today's reading is just that climax. All right, so let's look at a couple of things that happen right as it starts. Okay, so Beatty's not playing anymore. At this point, he's angry and he wants Montag to know. I do apologize ahead of time for there is a lot of cursing on Beatty's part in this. Beatty is angry and Beatty is a bad guy. Those are two qualifications that go into really bad language, okay? Please don't be like Beatty, all right? Okay, so Beatty says, now you did it. Old Montag wanted to fly near the sun, and now that he's burned his wings, he wonders why. Didn't I hint enough when I sent that hound around your place? So way back at the end of chapter 1, we noticed that there had been something like breathing underneath their door when him and Mildred and he were trying to read the books. And it was, in fact, the hound, which he thought might be the case. Now, I am skipping the cuss words, so if you're reading along, you'll notice I left some words out. I'm going to do that because there's no purpose in reading them. I feel like they're a characterization element, and I get why they're used, but I just don't feel like it's super necessary. There's an allusion there, though, that you may or may not have caught. It's an allusion to, and most allusions in literature are going to come from one of two places. I would say probably 70% of your allusions are going to come either from biblical references or ancient Greek or Roman myth, and this is the second. This is a reference to Icarus and Daedalus. I believe it's Icarus that flies too close to the sun. I don't remember which one. One of the sun flies too close to the sun, and the wings that they had made to escape this labyrinth, they melt. They were made of wax. He falls into the ocean. And, this image comes from it of when you reach too high, you try to go farther than you should, something bad can happen. And so that's the point he's making there. Now, immediately afterwards, Beatty brings up Clarice. He says, you weren't fooled by that little idiot's routine, were you? Flowers, butterflies, leaves, sunsets, it's all in her file. I've hit the bullseye. Look at the sick look on your face. A few grass blades and quarters of the moon. What trash. What good did she ever do with all of that? What he's saying is that all of this, nature and all of this imagery, what's the purpose in it? He says there's really just not any. And Montag points out that she doesn't do anything to harm anyone. Why hurt her just because she's doing that? And Bradbury gets upset. He's like, well, she's one of these typical do-gooders who constantly makes everyone else feel bad about themselves. And this is one of the important parts of this novel, in my opinion. I really think it's an issue that their culture, and when Bradbury wrote this, I guess he saw the writing on the wall. I'm not saying we were there yet, but he realized that we got to the point where we were no longer trying to improve ourselves because we saw other people were up here. They had done a lot and we were down here and we wanted to get there. Instead of doing that, what we decided to do was to start trying to pull these people down. And Bradbury, I guess, saw that coming. I mean, if he was alive today, he would definitely say we're doing that. Beatty says that Clarice was bad because she made these other people feel bad about themselves. And we see this in things like school where you got that, one or two kids who, everybody else is cheating on something, and those two kids are like, no, I'm not going to give you the answers, or no, I'm not going to participate, and everyone gets mad at them because what it is really deep down is they're feeling bad about their own behavior and their own choices. But we want everyone to make the same mistakes so that we don't feel so bad, and that's wrong. To be honest with you, that's incorrect. Anyway, Beatty decides to he's going to make Montag burn this house down on his own, kind of as punishment, which is a huge mistake. Before that happens, though, we get to see who made the call, and we might have been thinking maybe it was Mrs. Bowles or Mrs. Phelps, and one of them did actually, probably Mrs. Bowles made the call, but Beatty kind of overlooked it initially, and he says that later. Mildred herself, his wife, called this in, snitched on her own husband. And we see her running out of the door with a suitcase. And instead of being concerned about her home being burned down or her husband potentially being executed, but definitely going to jail, she is wandering out going, the family, oh, poor family. She's thinking about her TVs as she gets to the car. And that's really the last interaction we have with Mildred. She's mentioned later in this chapter, but as far as physically seeing her, that was the end of it. And what a fitting end for a garbage character. I mean, she is really just a trash human being, all right? So Montag right now has realized I'm about to go to jail. I've definitely lost my job. My family just collapsed. The one person who should have loved me has turned me in, and now I've got nothing. I mean, the guy is at his wit's end, all right? And then Beatty, like I said, makes a huge mistake. He says, okay, we're not going to use kerosene and stuff. You're going to take this flamethrower and you're going to burn everything piecemeal. In other words, a piece at a time. And this is a problem in this book for me. I feel like Bradbury just didn't know how to handle this, and so this is what he did. But in all honesty, if you were about to arrest someone, you would not give them a weapon beforehand before you arrested them. That just is stupid. So, big mistake on Beatty's part here. And we're going to see why in just a few minutes if you haven't already read it, which you should have. Okay? So Montag goes through. I apologize. Montag goes through and burns his house down. And, oddly enough, he's very content doing this. Obviously, he doesn't feel bad. There's a huge paragraph. It's one of Bradbury's very descriptive paragraphs where he says, a great nuzzling gout of fire leapt out to lap at the books and knocked them against the wall. He stepped into the bedroom and fired twice, and the twin beds went up in a great simmering whisper with more heat and passion and light than he would have supposed them to contain. He burned the bedroom walls and the cosmetics chest because he wanted to change everything, the chairs, the tables, and in the dining room, the silverware and plastic dishes. Everything that showed that he had lived here in this empty house with a strange woman who would forget him tomorrow, who had gone and quite forgotten him already, listening to her seashell radio pour in on her and in on her as she rode across town alone. And as before, it was good to burn. He felt himself gush out in the fire, snatch, rend, rip in half with flame, and put away the senseless problems. If there was no solution, well, then now there was no problem either. Fire was best for everything. Oh, and it also mentions in a minute, I'm not going to read that part, how excited he is to finally burn those TVs too. So honestly, he's kind of happy about what he's doing. He's enjoying this because he doesn't like his house, and this is allowing him to remove those emotions. Right before this, Beatty had made a comment about fire, and that's kind of what he's talking about. Beatty says that fire's perpetual motion is the thing we wanted to invent but never did, or almost perpetual motion. If you let it go on, it'd burn our lifetimes out. What is fire? It's a mystery. Scientists give us gobbledygook about friction and molecules, but they don't really know. Its real beauty is that it destroys responsibility and consequences. A problem gets too burdensome, then into the fire with it. Now, Montag, you're a burden, and fire will lift you off my shoulders, clean, quick, sure, nothing to rot later, antibiotic, aesthetic, and practical. So his idea here is the great thing about fire is it can destroy our responsibilities and our problems. You don't like something, just throw it in the fire and it's gone. Now, of course, that's a flawed way of thinking because the issue is still there. If you get a power bill in the mail and you're like, I don't have enough money for it, you can throw it in the fire. I mean, go right ahead. It burns up, but the power's still going to get shut off when you don't pay the bill. So it's kind of a flawed way of thinking, although I do know where he's getting is that, just you don't like something, destroy it. It's the way a lot of people believe, sadly, even in our world today. If something's uncomfortable, you just say it's fake news. You just lie about it. You say so-and-so's lying because it's a political thing instead of acknowledging that this is an issue that we need to deal with. So this is not that unheard of, okay? So Montag gets done burning everything. He comes out there, and he's just, exhausted, obviously. And to be honest with you, I honestly think that if things had just been the way they are, and if Montag had walked out there and Beatty said, give me the flamethrower, you're going to jail, we probably would have a different story. But that's not what happens. Montag asks, hey, was it my wife who did it? And Beatty says, yeah, she did after some other people did. He's like, you were an idiot doing what you did. You were going to get caught. And Beatty gets angry, and he continues to get angry, and he continues to berate or make fun of Montag, and then he hits him on the side of the head, and then that little radio that Faber gave him falls out of his ear. And then Beatty picks it up, listens to it, and is like, I knew something was up. And he says, we'll check in on this. We'll trace it back and check on your little friend later. And that is the point where Montag snaps and goes over the line. I think, honestly, he would have gone away peacefully, but now he is in a position where it's not just him on the line. It's a guy who trusted him. Faber is also on the line. So this is the point where Montag snaps, okay? So Beatty's an idiot. You give a guy a weapon, you make fun of him, you hit him, and then you threaten people he cares about. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? At this point, Montag flips the safety on the flamethrower and points it at Beatty. And Beatty kind of seems surprised. I guess he thought Montag was weaker than that. Beatty continues to anger him, though. He's like, go ahead and quote some lines at me. He even quotes a line from Julius Caesar that we recently read. He calls Montag a secondhand literateur is the term. And then he steps towards Montag like he's going to take the flamethrower. And that's it. Montag snaps. And he says a really cool line. He says, we never burned right. In other words, we never burned the right things. And then he proceeds to burn Beatty right away. One of the very, very descriptive passages here, I won't read it, I'll let you read it, but the image of him burning Beatty and continuously burning him until he is nothing except this just blob of nothingness afterwards is pretty disturbing, all right? He turns around, he knocks out the other two firemen. He does not kill them, Stoneman and Black, but he does knock them out because he needs to get away. But there's one thing he hasn't dealt with yet. One thing that we've been seeing since the beginning of the novel, and that's the Hound. And the Hound appears out of nowhere. And Montag just turns around and puts the flamethrower on it. As the Hound leaps through the air, it manages to hit Montag in the leg with, I think they call it Procaine in here, but basically it's going to numb up his leg. It's not the thing that would kill him. He's not loaded with that. He's not loaded with the medicine that would have killed him completely. But what it does do is it makes his entire leg go numb. Like if you've ever been to the dentist, they've numbed up your mouth. Imagine that being your leg. And guys, your legs are heavy. So now he's dragging this. He calls it feels like a burnt pine log he's dragging around. He's got to escape on one leg at this point. He does destroy the Hound. The Hound explodes. So, that's the end of the climax portion of this novel because we have had the confrontation between Beatty and the Hound and Montag. And now everything's different. That's the thing with the climax. That's one of the ways you know when you've hit the climax is after the climax, everything has changed. So now Montag's a fugitive. I mean, what's he going to do? He is now going to be arrested. He is a murderer. He's all sorts of things. He doesn't just have books. He's got a lot more on his plate now. So now he's got to get away. So he starts taking off. He knows that people are going to find out, all right? He decides that he's going to try to, on the way out, at least take a few with him, which is kind of a dynamic shift for Montag. In fact, he says, no, we'll save what we can. We'll do what there is left to do. If we have to burn, let's take a few more with us here. He's going to go back and he's going to retrieve a few of the books that he has left. On the way, something really important happens. And when the first few years I taught this book, I didn't talk about this, but I want to talk about it with you guys because it didn't click with me. The more and more I've taught it, though, the more and more I've learned about writing and how characters are created, the more I've caught on to this. Montag all of a sudden has this crisis about what he's just done. Let me read it to you. It says, something inside had jerked him to a halt and flopped him down. He lay where he had fallen and sobbed, his legs folded, his face pressed blindly to the ground. Beatty wanted to die. In the middle of the crying, Montag knew it for the truth. Beatty had wanted to die. He had just stood there, not really trying to save himself, just stood there joking, needling, thought Montag, and the thought was enough to stifle his sobbing and let him pause for air. How strange to want to die so much that you let a man walk around armed, and then instead of shutting up and staying alive, you go on yelling at people and making fun of them until you get them mad, and then skip a little bit further. He says he hadn't wanted to kill anyone, not even Beatty. His flesh gripped him and shrank as if he had been plunged in acid. He gagged. He saw Beatty, a torch not moving, fluttering out in the grass. He bit at his knuckles. I'm sorry. Oh God, so sorry. All right. So what we have here is Montag having this it clicks. It finally is all caught up with him, what he did, and he's upset. This is a requirement with characters. What happened is Montag has just committed an act that is kind of a bad act. All right. He committed a cold-blooded murder. Yes, he was being threatened, but he wasn't being threatened with death, although not directly anyway. And Beatty was unarmed. So for him to turn around and not only kill him, but to burn him and continuously hold that flame on him, again, go back and read that section. that takes a special kind of scariness. If Montag has no remorse about this, he is dangerously close to crossing a line to where we as readers will lose empathy for him. But having him fall down and cry here kind of regains that good guy-ness of him. Also point out that he says Beetee wanted to die. If you honestly think that's true, you're crazy. Nobody wants to get lit on fire. Beetee did not want to die. Montag is telling himself that so he can justify what he did, okay? That is, I have kids confused by that all the time. There's no sense that Beetee wished he was dead in this book. Beetee thought Montag was weaker than he is, because that's one of the things that comes with people who are not thinkers for themselves. You may be physically strong, but mentally, if you're weak, people can manipulate you very easily. I mean, if you've got a very mentally strong person, a very physically strong person in the adult world, the mentally strong person is probably the one pulling the strings. When you look at like mob movies and stuff, you know, the guy who's in charge, the Godfather, is always a very smart guy, and he's got a bunch of dumb muscle underneath him. So understand that Beetee thought he could push Montag's buttons and Montag wasn't going to stand up to him. So he didn't want to die, trust me, all right? So anyway, Montag keeps running away. He's trying to get out of here. He realizes, you must remember, burn them or they'll burn you. It's as simple as that. So he's in survival mode at this point. Now, he pops in the ear thimble, not the one that Faber was talking to, Mom, that one's gone, but the one that just has the basic news on it. He learns that he's being hunted. And he knows now, I've got to get out of here. And he runs into a problem. Where's he going to go? He's got no home. He's got no friends. He's got Faber, and that's it. And he realizes at that point, I am actually running towards Faber's house. It's not because he thinks Faber's going to help him, though. He just wants one last, thing to make him feel good about humanity, I guess. He wants to see Faber one last time. And so he's going to go see him, give him the money he's managed to take out of the bank. By the way, I don't remember where that section was, but it's kind of a neat section. It was a time period when banks had banking hours, and if it was after, I guess, 5 o'clock, the bank was closed. You couldn't get money out. But in their world, they're able to get money out because they have robot tellers that run the bank all the time. Now, we don't have robot tellers, but we do have ATMs. It's another one of the little side notes of things that Bradbury picked up and predicted that happened, which is really kind of cool about this book. And there's actually a lot in here that he does. So as we end, Montag sees all of the cops. The police apparently have, they call them Beetles. That's just their cars, but they also turn into helicopters and can fly, and then they come back down, which if you can be a helicopter, why would you be a car? But okay. But that's how this section, this first reading, Monday reading, ends, is Montag's on the run. So when we pick up tomorrow, we're going to pick up with, this weird scene of him at a gas station nearly getting killed. Because remember, we're in falling action now, and falling action is dangerous. If you're not a good writer, falling action can kill your book. So there still needs to be suspense. There still needs to be action because there's still, in my book, there's still another 30 to 40 pages to read, so we got to keep people reading. So we got to have another little scene of that. We got to have him and Faber meeting up one last time, and then we got to see what happens. Does he get out of town? Once he does, where does he go? What's the end game here? Okay, so falling action should still leave you with a bunch of questions. It shouldn't end the book. We're spoiled by things like action movies where the climax happens and then the credits roll immediately afterwards. That's not the way literature works, okay? All right, so I didn't say which questions this went over, so give me 2 seconds. Let me look at your questions, and I'll let you know. This should cover, questions 1 through 9. Yeah, questions 1 through 9. So 1 through 9 should be covered in this section. You should be able to get through these, okay? All right, guys. Well, I apologize. This video is a little longer than I've been trying to make. I'm trying to keep them right around 15 minutes, but, there was a lot of blah, blah, blah from me in this one. So I hope you guys have a great afternoon, great evening, great day, and I will see you again tomorrow.